Some dare call it conspiracy.
Deconstructing the Meme, Part 2. There is a meme floating around that has been shared widely by the conspiracy crowd and some on the far right. It asks, whom was correct and right, and lists a series of recent stories and theories. The meme has ticks under the conspiracy theorists column and crosses under the journalist column, implying that in all of these cases, the mainstream media has been incorrect and the conspiracy theorists have been proven right. Well, let's look at each case. The first is Hunter Biden's laptop. I presume they're talking about the idea that the materials found were fake, or that the laptop might have been part of Russian propaganda. This is disingenuous at best. No one denied that the emails and pictures were real. People did dispute if the physical laptop or the numerous copied hard drives had been altered, or if they had actually been in the possession of Hunter, reasoning that the emails belonging to Hunter could have been remotely hacked and placed on any machine. As the data was transferred through several laptops and hard drives, there was a possibility that information could have been omitted, added, or altered to give a false impression of the content. People also pointed out that the supposed crimes found on the laptop connected to Burisma Energy in Ukraine, lauded by the right wing, were false and were indeed altered and presented to give the impression of crimes and corruption where there was none. The criminal activity found on the laptop was drug use, which should have precluded Hunter from buying a gun. That is what he was prosecuted and then pardoned for, alongside failure to pay tax. Ideas of the Ukrainian energy firm Burisma paying Biden Sr. and Hunter millions of dollars in bribes came from an FBI informant named Alexander Smirnov. He made up the claim and just so happens to have intimate connections with Russian intelligence. He was recently jailed for 6 years for these lies. The Burisma story came from Rudy Giuliani, who was fed lies by Russian intelligence agent Andrei Derkach when actively looking for propaganda to use to discredit Biden Sr.'s presidential campaign whilst he was in the Ukraine. Russian involvement in spreading lies about Biden was coordinated by Russian GRU Lieutenant General Vladimir Alexeyevin and his deputy Alexei Savin and Ihor Kolesnikov. Biden Sr. had not protected Hunter nor withheld funds to conceal corruption in the firm. In fact, he initiated an investigation that rooted out corruption by prosecutor Viktor Shokin and led to Burisma being fined. None of this corruption happened whilst Hunter worked for Burisma. It was years before. This information about Hunter, that the conspiracy theory crowd promoted, which turned out to be incorrect, was all in line with proven Russian intelligence operations designed to incriminate and smear Biden and promote Trump. The conspiracy crowd also claimed that the laptop showed child porn. This was a complete lie. 1-0 to the journalists. The next topic is mRNA vaccine harm. This is simply a fabrication. mRNA vaccines have been proven to be both safe and effective despite the frothing of anti-vaxxers. Sadly, there have been rare side effects, as with all medicines. However, the majority of serious adverse effects and deaths have been caused by the non-mRNA AstraZeneca vaccine, and thankfully, these numbers too were extremely low. Perhaps they're talking about the AstraZeneca vaccine being withdrawn from the market. It wasn't withdrawn due to high numbers of side effects, those are still extremely rare. It was taken off the market because it is obsolete. Other vaccines provide better protection against newer strains. To reiterate, this is not an mRNA vaccine. There have been rare cases of myocarditis as a side effect of the Pfizer vaccine, but the vast majority of these are not serious. Those susceptible to myocarditis would fare far worse if they caught COVID. My friend actually got myocarditis following his vaccination. He was mildly ill, recovered within an extremely short period of time, and whined about it far less than any of the attention seekers on the internet trying to pretend that this is a major problem. Any harm that comes from any medicine is tragic, but the conspiracy theory crowd has cynically exploited and lied about this for their own agenda. Those who did not receive the vaccine are 8 times more likely to be hospitalized from COVID compared to those who were vaccinated. There have been over 392 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine delivered in Europe alone, and any ill effect at all has been very rare. So that's 2-0 journalists. The next topic is plandemic. I suppose this is about people having plans in place for pandemics, somehow proving that the incident was fabricated. Well, by that logic, it was the fire brigade who insisted on fire drills that actually burned down my school, and therefore anyone who saw me in the vicinity just before the fire started is quite mistaken. They might be referring to Event 201 or Lockstep from the Rockefeller Foundation. These were imagined scenarios for dealing with the pandemic. However, when comparing the content of those to the recent SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, the main similarities are that there was a disease and governments took various actions to combat it, which in hindsight does not seem entirely unreasonable. 3-0 journalists. Next, we have lockdowns. I presume this is about lockdowns being tyrannical and draconian. And this completely ignores the fact that in the UK, the government actually delayed the lockdown so events like the horse racing could still go ahead. Then Dominic Cummings' actions ensured that no one followed any remaining rules after about a month. This also ignores the fact that the UK Nudge Unit via Surguru Communications was working with people like Sunitra Gupta to claim that lockdowns were not needed. Or the Treasury encouraging people to continue to go to work. Or the UK government encouraging people to eat out to help out, which spread the disease. Or the government's desire to let it rip and go for herd immunity. Or the Prime Minister shaking everyone's hands. Or Anders Tegnell of Sweden saying that he regretted his country's initial lax approach and his decision not to lock down harder and longer, and said that this had led to a huge number of preventable deaths. The conspiracy theory crowd also missed the fact that the anti-lockdown protests were arranged by the Heritage Foundation, the think tank with connections to big business that is behind the Mandate for Leadership and Project 2025. In the UK, anti-lockdown sentiment was organised by the major news organisations who did not want to lose sales of newspapers from daily commuters. 4-0 journalists. Then the meme mentions ivermectin efficacy. If this is about COVID or cancer, this drug does not treat either condition. That is simply not true. There is absolutely no evidence to support this idea, and anyone that repeats this claim is either a liar or does not have the intelligence to understand what they are reading. 5-0 journalists. This is followed up by hydroxychloroquine's efficacy. If this is about COVID or cancer, this drug does not treat either condition. This is simply not true. There is absolutely no evidence to support this idea, and anyone that repeats this claim is either a liar or does not have the intelligence to understand what they are reading. 6-0 journalists. The next story is the idea that face masks are useless. This comes from people not being able to interpret instructions on a box. Masks are designed to stop the wearer from spreading germs to others. Though they do provide a degree of protection, that is not the primary function. Though I could also point out that the conspiracy crowd also claim that wearing a mask traps germs next to your mouth, making you get ill. There's 2 points here. 1, these trapped germs would only come from inside the user, so they already had them. And 2, if that's the case, then they do provide an effective barrier, and the concept that they are useless is completely disproven. 7-0 journalists. Next, they mention censorship on social media. Unless they're talking about Elon Musk banning the word cis or removing accounts that disagree with him, this is nonsense. Censorship was of things that were untrue or harmful or that broke the terms of service of the app. I mean, sure, Zuckerberg has now said that he will remove this from Facebook, but this is obviously a spineless attempt to curry favour with an authoritarian Trump administration. It's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Elon Musk himself tried to show censorship on Twitter with the Twitter files, but they contained absolutely no evidence to support his claims. The conspiracy crowd also missed the fact that much of this disinformation comes from Russian troll farms or data mining and manipulation organizations such as Cambridge Analytica. They missed this because they were the target of the propaganda. 8-0 journalists. Next, we have Epstein's sex island. This was reported by the mainstream media years before the alt media, when Epstein was first charged with sexually abusing girls that he had hired as masseuses. The alt media did not mention Epstein until this tall, handsome English chap speculated that his secret cameras could be used for blackmail in 2011, which was similar to reported CIA entrapment programs. The mainstream media has reported on every single aspect of the case, including potential connections to the intelligence agencies in the USA and Israel. They reported on the sweetheart deal he got from prosecutors and his friendship with Donald Trump. All that the alternative media has done is speculate and try to downplay credible and disturbing connections to people that they like. 9-0 journalists. 1-0 me. We then have elite paedophile rings. Not a single elite paedophile ring has been exposed by the alternative media. I mean, sure, they've baselessly accused people with differing political views of being monsters and made up stories about children being made into shoes, being kept in underground tunnels, or being transported via mail-order furniture shops. But absolutely nothing credible at all. The closest would be the case of Marc Dutroux in Belgium, but this was exposed by the mainstream media. 10-0 journalists. Up next, we have biolabs in Ukraine. This is the Russian propaganda that they have invaded Ukraine because there are US-run biolabs producing chemical weapons, including genetic weapons targeting exclusively Russians. This was spread by useful idiots like Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard. There is absolutely no evidence to support this theory. 11-0 journalists. Then we have child trafficking. The conspiracy theory crowd has never once exposed a child trafficking ring. In fact, they're usually reluctant to look at potentially legitimate accusations of child exploitation by people like Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump's modeling agencies, Donald Trump's friends, Andrew Tate, and others. The film The Sound of Freedom was a complete fabrication. Tim Ballard, the author of the film, has himself been accused of sexual misconduct. Grooming gangs in the UK were first exposed by Labour MPs. 12-0 journalists. The next story is Russiagate. This was the idea that Russians were trying to sway opinions of the American public in order to promote Donald Trump. This was proven to be absolutely true. It is debated if Trump knew or not, but efforts to promote him via the Kremlin were very real. This included the Podesta email hack, which fed into the fabricated Pizzagate, and this happened the day that the tape where Trump said that he grabbed women by the pussy was released. There was also the DNC hack, and helped by people such as Guccifer 2.0 and WikiLeaks, and coordinated cyber attacks by the GRU against the DNC, and also Russian-backed troll farms promoting anti-Hillary Clinton material. Later, people like Tim Pool and Dave Rubin were exposed as taking money from Russian sources to promote certain stories that favoured Russia. Tucker Carlson has promoted Russian propaganda, and even Alex Jones of InfoWars promotes Putin ever since he met with Russian intelligence in 2015, and they flattered him by lying and saying that Putin was a fan of the show. 13-0 journalists. Then we have the Steele dossier. I presume this is about the rumour that Trump had prostitutes urinate on a bed. A dossier is a collection of rumours and potential stories that have been heard about the subject. It isn't a report. It's about rumour. The compromat rumour that Trump had prostitutes urinate on a bed might not be true, but it was never stated as a fact. However, other things within the dossier, such as Russia's cultivating of Trump over the years, do appear to ring true. It also came to light that Russia tried to interfere with elections, so clearly did favour Trump, as the dossier claimed. The dossier was not part of a smear campaign against Trump by Democrats. Fusion GPS, who Steele worked for, was hired by Republicans who wanted to rival Trump in the election. 40-0 journalists. Finally, we have Ukraine corruption. Unless they are referring to the fact that for the years prior to 2014, the government of Ukraine was a puppet of the Russian government, I don't know what this means. It's simply Russian propaganda. If they're claiming that money from the war effort is being embezzled, there's no evidence for this. If they are again referring to Burisma, this corruption was stifled and stopped by Joe Biden. Well, that's a clean sweep. Can you believe that the do-your-own-research crowd haven't actually bothered to do any research? Again, on a meme claiming that the conspiracy theory crowd got everything right, literally everything is wrong.